There's a difference between winning and dominating, between being good and being inevitable. On June 27, 1988, at the Atlantic City Convention Hall, Mike Tyson didn't just beat Michael Spinks, he erased him from the sport. In 91 seconds, Mike destroyed an undefeated heavyweight champion and proved to the world that he was the most dangerous fighter who ever lived. Spinks came into that ring 31-0, a former Olympic gold medalist who'd beaten Larry Holmes twice. The media called him the Jinx, the one fighter who could neutralize Mike's power. He lasted less than 2 minutes. Mike was 21 years old, 34-0 with 30 knockouts, the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world holding the WBC, WBA, and IBF belts. And for 91 seconds, he looked absolutely perfect. Fast, powerful, unstoppable, the baddest man on the planet. Mike Tyson is 58 years old now. He's been retired from boxing for nearly 2 decades. But when people ask him about his greatest performance, he always comes back to one night. June 27, 1988. That was the last time I was that fighter, Mike has said. After Spinks, everything started falling apart. The marriage, the training, the focus. But that night I was perfect. That was the fighter Cuss wanted me to be. The fight lasted 91 seconds. But those 91 seconds captured everything Mike Tyson was supposed to be, and everything he would never be again. What if that perfection had lasted? What if Mike had stayed disciplined after those 91 seconds? How different would boxing history be? Mike Tyson wasn't supposed to make it out of Brownsville, Brooklyn. The neighborhood was a war zone where most kids ended up dead or in prison. But at 13, Mike was saved by a man named Cus D'Amato. Cus took Mike from a juvenile detention center, made him his legal guardian, and promised him something impossible. You'll be the youngest heavyweight champion in history. Mike didn't believe him, but Cus trained him relentlessly in the peekaboo style. And in November 1986, at just 20 years old, Mike fulfilled that promise by destroying Trevor Berbick in 2 rounds to become the youngest heavyweight champion ever. Cus had died a year before and never saw it. But Mike had kept the promise. Now, by 1988, Mike had gone even further. He'd conquered the boxing world completely. Over the next year, Mike unified all 3 heavyweight titles, beating James Smith for the WBA belt and Tony Tucker for the IBF belt. By August 1987, Mike Tyson was the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world at 21 years old. He was undefeated at 32-0, and terrifying. Every opponent looked scared before the fight even started. Mike wasn't just beating fighters, he was breaking them mentally. By early 1988, Mike had defended his titles against Larry Holmes and Tony Tubbs, knocking them both out. He was 34-0 with 30 knockouts. He was the most famous athlete on the planet. And the boxing world had run out of challengers. There was only one man left who people thought could beat Mike Tyson. His name was Michael Spinks, and on June 27, 1988, they would fight for everything. Michael Spinks wasn't just another opponent. He was 31-0 and had never lost. He'd won Olympic gold in 1976 and dominated light heavyweight for years. Then, in 1985, Spinks moved up to heavyweight and did the unthinkable. He beat Larry Holmes twice. Holmes had been undefeated at 48-0 and was considered one of the greatest heavyweights ever. But Spinks outboxed him and took his title. By 1988, Spinks was the lineal heavyweight champion. He was older than Mike at 31, more experienced, and still undefeated. The media called him the Jinx, and believed his movement and boxing IQ would neutralize Mike's power. The fight was announced for June 27, 1988, at the Atlantic City Convention Hall. It was the biggest fight in boxing. Mike Tyson, the undisputed champion and knockout artist, against Michael Spinks, the undefeated lineal champion and master boxer. Winner take all. The press asked Spinks repeatedly if he was worried about Mike's power. Spinks smiled. "I've been hit before," he said. "I'm not afraid of Mike Tyson." That confidence would last 91 seconds. The buildup was chaotic behind the scenes. In February 1988, Mike had married actress Robin Givens. The marriage was already troubled in public. But Mike stayed focused on Spinks. He trained hard and looked sharp in sparring. In interviews, he was confident. "Spinks is going to try to survive," Mike said. "But he won't. I'm going to hurt him early." Don King promoted the fight as once and for all. It would be the richest fight in boxing history at that time. Mike would make over $20 million. Spinks would make $13.5 million. The winner would be the undisputed champion. The loser would be forgotten. On June 27, 1988, the Atlantic City Convention Hall was packed with over 21,000 fans. Mike entered the ring first in black trunks, no robe, no fanfare. His face was blank, cold. He looked like a machine built to destroy. Spinks entered next in white trunks. He looked calm, confident, shadowboxing in his corner. But when the bell rang, that confidence evaporated. From the opening second, Mike came forward like a wrecking ball. He didn't wait. Didn't feel Spinks out. He attacked. Spinks tried to move, tried to use his jab, but Mike was too fast. He cut off the ring, he got inside, and he started landing. 20 seconds into the fight, Mike landed a short right hand that stunned Spinks. Spinks backed up. Mike followed. He threw a left hook to the body. Spinks bent forward. Mike followed with a right uppercut to the head. Spinks stumbled backward into the ropes. His legs wobbled. The referee, Frank Cappuccino, gave him a standing 8 count. Spinks nodded that he was okay, but he wasn't. His eyes were glazed. His confidence was gone. The bell hadn't even been rung for a minute, and Michael Spinks already knew he was in trouble. Cappuccino waved them back in, and Mike went for the finish. Mike walked Spinks down like a predator. Spinks tried to move, tried to survive, but there was nowhere to go. Mike landed another right hand, then a left hook. Spinks was hurt, badly, and then, 91 seconds into the fight, Mike landed the punch. A perfect right hand to the jaw. Spinks went down. Hard. He fell onto his back, his head bouncing off the canvas. The crowd exploded. Cappuccino started counting. Spinks tried to get up. He rolled to his side. He pushed himself to his knees, but he couldn't make it. At the count of 10, Michael Spinks was still on the canvas. The fight was over. Mike Tyson had destroyed an undefeated champion in 91 seconds. The Atlantic City Convention Hall erupted in chaos. The crowd was on its feet, roaring in disbelief. Mike's corner rushed into the ring. Don King was screaming into cameras, arms raised, proclaiming Mike the greatest of all time. Celebrities at ringside were standing, pointing, talking animatedly. The energy was electric. And Mike? Mike didn't celebrate. He didn't raise his arms in triumph. He didn't showboat or gloat. He just walked calmly to his corner, sat down on the stool, and stared into the distance. Like he'd expected it, like destroying an undefeated champion in less than 2 minutes was just another day at the office, like it was inevitable. In the post-fight interview with HBO's Larry Merchant, Mike was asked how it felt to unify all the titles and destroy Michael Spinks so quickly. "I'm the best fighter in the world," Mike said, his voice calm and matter-of-fact. His eyes were cold, confident. "Nobody can beat me. I'm too strong, too fast. I'm the baddest man on the planet." And in that moment, with Spinks still being helped out of the ring, nobody in the world could argue with him. Mike Tyson had just delivered the most dominant performance of his career. 91 seconds of absolute perfection. The Spinks fight was supposed to be the beginning of Mike's legendary reign, the moment where he proved beyond any doubt that he was unbeatable and would dominate for years to come. And for a while, it looked that way. The world bowed to Mike Tyson, but behind the scenes, everything was falling apart faster than anyone realized. Mike's marriage to Robin Givens was a disaster. The fights were constant, public, and humiliating. By September 1988, just 3 months after the Spinks demolition, Mike and Robin did a joint interview with Barbara Walters on national television, where Robin called Mike manic depressive, while Mike sat next to her, looking broken, lost, and humiliated. The interview shocked the world. The marriage ended in a messy public divorce by early 1989, but the damage to Mike's psyche was already done. Don King had also taken full, complete control of Mike's career by this point. The people who'd been with Mike from the beginning, the trainers, managers, and advisors who actually cared about him, were systematically pushed out. And in December 1988, just 6 months after destroying Spinks, Mike made a decision that would haunt him forever. He fired Kevin Rooney, the trainer who'd been with him since Cus D'Amato died. The last direct link to the discipline, structure, and technical brilliance that made Mike great. Without Rooney, Mike's training became chaotic and unfocused. His camps were shorter. His sparring partners were yes men. His preparation was lazy. The discipline was gone. On February 11th, 1990, just 18 months after destroying Michael Spinks in 91 seconds, Mike Tyson lost to James "Buster" Douglas in Tokyo, Japan. It was the biggest upset in sports history. A 42-1 underdog knocked out the unbeatable Mike Tyson in the 10th round. The aura of invincibility, the fear factor, the mystique, all of it was gone in one night, and Mike never got it back. He won some fights after Douglas, but he was never the same fighter who destroyed Spinks. The speed that made him unstoppable was gone. The head movement that made him untouchable was diminished. The discipline and focus that made him great were completely absent. The fire was out. By the time Mike retired in 2005 after quitting on his stool against Kevin McBride, he'd been knocked out by Lennox Lewis, Evander Holyfield, and Danny Williams. He'd become a cautionary tale about wasted potential and lost discipline. But none of that erases what he did on June 27, 1988. For 91 seconds, Mike Tyson was perfect, flawless, unstoppable, and the world saw what he could have been if he'd stayed that way. Mike Tyson is 58 years old now. He's lived a full life since that night in Atlantic City. Champion, convict, comeback fighter, actor, podcaster. He's done it all. But when Mike talks about his career, he always comes back to June 27, 1988. "That was the last time I was that fighter," Mike has said. "After Spinks, my life fell apart. The marriage, the training, everything. But that night I was unstoppable." The 91-second destruction of Michael Spinks remains one of the most dominant performances in boxing history. Spinks never fought again. He retired immediately after the loss. "I knew I couldn't beat him," Spinks said years later. "I knew it in the ring. I knew it after the first punch. Mike Tyson was on another level that night. Mike has reflected on what went wrong after the Spinks fight. "I had everything," he said. "I was undisputed champion. I was undefeated. I was making millions. But I lost focus. I let the wrong people in, Robin, Don King, and I fired the people who cared about me. If I'd stayed disciplined, if I'd kept Rooney, maybe things would have been different." Today, Mike lives a quieter life. He's sober. He's focused on his family. He does podcasts and interviews where he speaks openly about his past. And he honors the memory of Cus D'Amato, the man who made him champion. "Cus would have been proud of the Spinks fight," Mike has said. "That was everything he taught me. Speed, power, discipline. That was me at my best." June 27th, 1988, will forever be remembered as the night Mike Tyson proved he was the most dangerous fighter on the planet. He walked into the Atlantic City Convention Hall as the undisputed heavyweight champion. And he walked out having destroyed an undefeated legend in 91 seconds. Michael Spinks came into that fight 31-0. He'd beaten Larry Holmes twice. He was supposed to be the only man who could beat Mike. But Mike didn't just beat him. He erased him. And for 91 seconds, the world saw Mike Tyson at absolute perfection. But the legacy of that night is complicated. On one hand, it was the peak of Mike's dominance, the moment when everything came together: speed, power, precision, fear. On the other hand, it was the last time Mike would ever look that good. Within 6 months, he'd fired Kevin Rooney. Within 18 months, he'd lost to Buster Douglas. And within a few years, he'd be in prison. The fighter who destroyed Spinks in 91 seconds never came back. The question remains, what would Mike's career have looked like if he'd stayed disciplined after the Spinks fight? If he'd kept Rooney? If he'd avoided Robin Givens and Don King? Would he have remained undefeated? Would he have dominated the heavyweight division for a decade? We'll never know. But what we do know is this. On June 27, 1988, Mike Tyson destroyed Michael Spinks in 91 seconds and proved he was the baddest man on the planet. And for those 91 seconds, he was absolutely perfect. The undisputed champion, the knockout artist, the fighter who made grown men quit before the fight even started. That night was the peak of Mike Tyson's greatness. And while his career didn't end the way it should have, those 91 seconds will always stand as proof of what Mike Tyson was capable of when he was at his absolute best. The most dangerous fighter the world had ever seen. Here's the final question. If Mike had stayed disciplined after June 27, 1988, how different would boxing history be? The answer is, we'll never know. But for 91 seconds, Mike Tyson showed the world perfection. And that's a legacy that will never fade.